All right. So, yeah, Nikos will be chairing tonight. We are going to be discussing the Objectivist Ethics, the first essay in Ayn Rand's The Virtue of Selfishness. We're going to be discussing it in two parts. So this essay is going to be the topic of next week's discussion as well. Today's focus is on the values that Rand talks about, the cardinal values she presents in the Objectivist Ethics. And next week will be focused on the virtues, to are related very much, so they will probably come up in both discussions. Before that, I'm gonna just encourage you to put in your calendars a couple of events that we haven't posted yet but are happening next week. So Sunday, let me just look up the exact title, but the event itself will be posted in the next couple of days, tomorrow or the following day. But this Sunday, we are going to be, basically the London Ayn Rand Meetup is going to be the guest on HBL on Meeting of the Minds with Harry Binswanger. Yeah, and the topic for that is going to be something about immigration, but I don't remember the title, so I'll check it. Yeah. Immigration controls as preventive law. That is the topic. So that's 5 p.m. this Sunday. Strongly encourage everybody to join us for that. And then Monday, we haven't posted that yet either, but Monday we will have a discussion or debate on the topic of evolution and volition in psychology. The speakers are objectivist psychologist, Dr. Gina Gorlin, and evolutionary psychologist, Dr. Diana Fleischman. So this is an event we've wanted to do for a while. I'm really happy that we got Gina, of course, and a leading evolutionary psychologist. So yeah, encourage you all to put that in the calendar. We'll post it soon, but that's going to be 7 p.m. Monday. And Meeting of the Minds is 5 p.m. UK time on Sunday.
I literally just put it on my calendar.
Nice.
So, Andy, thank you very much for being with us. Kick us off.
Well, you're welcome, Nikos. Thanks to you and Razi for having me. And, you know, the main reason I'm here is because they pay me the big bucks, right? I mean, we are egoists after all. But no, seriously, that's, you know, it's just fun. These sessions are fun and informative. Look, the question in moral philosophy is, what's the relationship between values and facts? You know, the value judgments, especially moral value judgments regarding good and evil, you know, right and wrong, are they grounded in reality? Are they grounded in observable facts, or are they simply subjective manifestations? You know, everybody simply, you know, feels what's right or what's good for them. This is the question of moral philosophy. Can we tie moral judgments of right and wrong, good and evil to reality? Is ethics in effect akin to a science? And you notice the way moral philosophers historically have dealt with this. You know, they've in different forms. I'm not an ethicist. I'm not an expert, you know, in moral philosophy, but you know, I know something about it. But you know, David Hume, of course, is very famous for raising the question: what's the relationship between values and facts? Is there a relationship between values and facts? And his answer, of course, is no. That you know, value judgments that includes moral value judgments, of course, are subjective, and they're simply, you know, driven by the feelings, desires, aspirations, hopes of the subject. Now, notice, I think the key point to me, anyway, is notice the way Ayn Rand tweaks the question. You know, she's not asking the question, what's the relationship between values and facts? Rather, she just kind of tweaks the question slightly and raises the question in this form: what is the fundamental fact of reality that gives rise to the phenomenon of value? And when you change the question just slightly like that, what is the fundamental fact of reality that gives rise to the phenomenon of valuing? You know, as you would expect, a philosopher whose metaphysics is grounded on the primacy of existence principle, and that existence exists. When you tweak the question like that, it points you in the right direction of the answer. This is why, you know, I always teach my logic students, and I've been teaching logic for 40 years now. It's how it shows how old I am. You know, I always advise my logic students, at least back in the day when many of the kids were able to understand logic. Today, it's just torture for them. It's just painful to watch. Although there are a few exceptions in any class who really get it. But take your time to understand exactly what a question asks. Because if the question is properly formulated, it'll point you directly to that aspect of reality that will provide the answer. What's the fundamental fact of reality that gives rise to the phenomenon of valuing? Ayn Rand observes there are living beings, and they are very different. Animate beings are very different from inanimate beings. This is not just humans. Animate beings more broadly, including bugs and stuff, you know, certainly plants. Living beings take steps, they take action. And they take action in order to sustain something that's of enormous value, that is their life. And if they, for example, you know, plants dig their roots into the soil for chemical nutrients. They grow their leaves towards the sun to gain sunlight. You see the carnivorous animals like lions, you know, hunting gazelles or antelopes on the plains of the Serengeti for food. You know, living beings need to reach certain goals in order to sustain their lives, as distinct from an inanimate object. I mean, take a rock, for example. You know, the form or the shape, rockness, if I use a Platonic term here, the form of it, the shape of rockhood is of no value to the rock. It takes no steps in order to sustain its rockhood. If we atomize it, if we vaporize it to a bunch of dust particles, it's of no consequence to the rock. It has not lost anything that it took action in order to sustain. But for a living being, by contrast, you know, if we kill the lion, you know, it has lost something that it was taking action steps in order to keep, in order to retain or sustain. And so this is a momentous identification in the field of moral philosophy. I mean, Ayn Rand in this regard is like the Newton or the Darwin of moral philosophy. In my judgment, again, I'm not an expert in this field, but I know something about it. This makes her the greatest moral philosopher of history. That she identified the objective basis of ethics, the fact-based foundation of moral judgments, that which sustains an organism's life is the good for it, and that which harms, undermines, or terminates an organism's life for it is the evil. This is the brilliant, insightful identification that turns ethics from, you know, a subjective field of competing feelings, desires, hopes, and aspirations into something akin to a science. It's a rational discipline now that can be argued factually, by reference to reality, by reference to facts. So, I think we should discuss this at length, but I think that's a brief introduction that shows, you know, Ayn Rand's seminal insights at the foundational level of moral philosophy.
Thank you, Andy. So I want to mention 4 points, and I want your comments on it or your explanation of it. The first one is in page 13, so in the opening of the Objectivist Ethics essay. And it's the sentence that says the following: what is morality or ethics? It is a code of values to guide men's choices and actions. The choices and actions that determine the purpose and the course of his life. Like, already from first page, bam, there is something here that goes against most things that most people understand as philosophy. So you go to a philosophy class, first week, the famous celebrity philosopher comes in and says, I will give you the trolley problem. There is a trolley and it goes against some people. Shall I press this lever and kill these people, or press this lever and kill these people? And here comes Rand and says, no, no, no. Philosophy is not about trolleyism, as my teachers in the Objectivist Academic Center called this. Philosophy is about how to guide and determines the course of your life. So, and determines is a very, very strong word. So, is basically values then something similar as morality, which means something which is your guidebook for life. So Leonard Peikoff says morality is the book that tells you basically what are the how basically to operate as a human being. So what is the relationship between morality and values? Because in the next page, in page 14, Rand says, is the concept of value, comma, of good or evil? So again, there seems to be this, let's say, interjection of morality and values. So are they almost interchangeable? Is the one part of the other? How do you see the relationship between morality and values?
First of all, I want to point out, Ayn Rand thought of objectivism, in reference to the very abstract, super rationalistic examples that often come up in class, the prisoner's dilemma, and stuff like that. Ayn Rand thought of objectivism as a philosophy for living on Earth, for actually guiding human choices and actions towards flourishing life on Earth. May you live long and prosper, right? I always like to quote the Vulcan salutation, and that's the purpose of philosophy, Ayn Rand, is to show us how to live long and prosper. Now, not to try to resolve these intensely rationalistic dilemmas that academic philosophers come up with. And I love Ayn Rand's definition of rationalism, by the way, deduction without reference to reality. That is perfect. That is just perfect. But value judgments, remember, subsume issues wider than ethics. There's aesthetic value judgments too. There's value judgments about artworks, and art is not just a superficial luxury for the wealthy or for the intelligentsia. In Ayn Rand's view, art is necessary to fuel the human soul. It's a psychological and intellectual need, according to Ayn Rand, and I 100% agree about the enormous value of art. But we're talking about ethics. We're talking here about value judgments, not about works of art, but about right and wrong, issues of good and evil. So we need to make that distinction. So in this context, when she talks about value judgments, the essay is the objectivist ethics, right? It's not the objectivist aesthetics. And so in this context, we're talking about moral value judgments. But one last thing on moral values that since Ayn Rand points out, the necessities of life are what makes something good or evil, that a moral value is something that promotes an organism's life, given the nature of the organism, and a disvalue or anti-value or an evil would be something that harms, undermines, or kills the organism's life. So I think that's what Ayn Rand is showing us here about distinctively moral values.
Thank you. So now I have two questions, and I would like your answer in a way. How would I persuade my uncle, who is a good person but not into philosophy? So going now to the introduction, Rand says there are two moral questions that altruism kind of throws away. The one is, what are values? And I think, Andy, you've answered this question in your introduction. But the second question is, who should be the beneficiary of values? Now, objectivism says that yourself should be the beneficiary of values. But what would stop, for example, someone to say, I don't want to be the beneficiary of my values. I love my girlfriend, my mother, my children, my niece so much that I want to live my life and I want them to be the beneficiary of values. So what is wrong with this, and why should yourself be the beneficiary of values?
Well, Nikos, in your example, you said, I love my fill in the blank. There's a key to understanding it, that that the action is egoistic, that it does further your life. Let's get some definitions here and some understanding. Egoism is a moral code that says an individual should be the beneficiary of his own actions. Was altruism is a moral code that exhorts us, to sacrifice the self distinctively for other people. In your example, that's not done sacrificially. I mean, if the person says, "I love my wife, my children, my husband, whatever it is, so much," that's done egoistically out of love. And when you take steps to promote the well-being of people you love, it makes you happy. And I think we need to be clear on this, on egoism. Most philosophers and individuals, whether they support egoism or they oppose it, generally construe it too narrowly. Egoism is often construed as, well, I want to make a lot of money, have a successful career, make a lot of money, and that's about as far as it goes. But no, egoism's not just about having a successful career and earning a lot of money, although that is certainly a legitimate part of it. Egoism is about achieving eudaimonia. It's about achieving flourishing life in accordance with human nature. And that includes education and, developing the mind. It includes a successful career and making money. It includes having close friendships and bring, human intimacy into your life. It definitely includes romantic love, and having a flourishing romantic relationship. It includes, appreciating the arts and sports and travel, and whatever healthy life promoting values of physical, bodily health, mental health. All of this is part of flourishing life. And in pursuit of any or all of this, you're living egoistically. And that includes, it emphatically, maybe the clearest example for people is when you talk about their children. That's what I think when they can really get it. They go, oh yeah. Conventionally we say, well, I spent all that money on my child's education if I couldn't afford the Ferrari that I want, and therefore, such parents make the sacrifice. That's the conventional view, right? When you explain it to most parents, you go, oh yeah, no, wait a minute. The child, the Ferrari may be of value to you, but the child's well-being, health, education, future happiness, current and future happiness, is of vastly greater importance to most parents, and properly so, than the Ferrari is. And so all that money spent on the child's well-being, health, education, and so on is done egoistically. It's of vastly greater value to the loving parents than the car is. Now, a sacrifice, if I don't love whoever it is I'm doing this for, I want to study. I use the example that I was discussing recently here. I want to go to college and study literature and, be an English teacher. Well, my parents insist that I go to medical school. And medicine's a great profession, but I have no interest in it. I'm going to be bored. I don't love my parents, but I got a duty to them. I take this Kantian approach, and it's a duty to them, and I sacrifice what I want. Then you say that's a sacrifice. This person's going to be miserable. Their career is going to be very unhappy. But for most people, when they do things, well, I think for any person, when you do things for the people you love, it's the same as doing it for yourself, because fulfilling the lives of the people you love is enormously satisfying to you.
This is clear, Andy. But the question is, why is it good to do things for yourself? So I understand it's become clear that, if you say I basically live, quote, for my kids because I love them so much, yes, the recipient is you. But going one level of abstraction above that, why should the recipient of values be first and foremost yourself?
Okay, and the answer to that question is because life requires the achievement of values. I mean, if we understand that, that's the whole argument for egoism is right there. Life requires the achievement of values, and maybe go one step further to what we could think of as metaphysical individualism or metaphysical individuality. And that is, particular things are real. Particular things exist. There's a particular pen. This isn't penness in the Platonic conception of a universal that subsumes all pens. Particularity is real. It's a fundamental aspect of reality. Aristotle identified that, right? He spoke about entities as the building block of reality, as the primary essential building block or the component of reality. And in human nature, applied to human nature, human beings are individuals. Nikos Sotirakopoulos is an individual, unique and unrepeatable. And so's Andrew Bernstein, and so's Rosie Ginsburg, and so's Ayn Rand, and just to stick it to Rosie for a second, so's Candace Owens, my favorite, Black American conservative.
Yeah, if only she knew it.
What's that, Rosie?
If only she knew she's an individual, then we'd be good. All right, sorry. Go
anyway,
ahead.
But individuality is real. It's the fundamental. It's a part of the fundamentals of human nature. An individual can sustain his or her life. An individual can lose his or her life, and therefore, since achieving values is what sustains life, and sustaining life is the essence of what makes something good, the individual, in order to be morally upright, must achieve values for himself or herself.
Okay, time for some devil's advocacy here. By the way, whoever wants to ask questions, feel free to raise your hands. Otherwise, I'm happy to monopolize the discussion with Andy to infinity. So, okay, here's the devil's advocate. So the proper communist would say, look, another metaphysical fact of reality is that, okay, maybe they wouldn't use these terms, but they would say, with cooperation, we get better results. So why not that I try to pursue your values, you try to pursue my values, and it's basically, so why is it that you have to be the recipient of your values, whereas we can see that we live in a society, therefore, I pursue, we help, we live for Joseph, Joseph lives for Stephanie, Stephanie for Glenn, I live for Razi, and Razi lives for you. So why is it that it comes, yes, I understand that life is the standard, but why your life?
Well, that certainly sounds like Marxism. What a rationalistic construct that is. Well, first of all, before I even answer that, at least coming from a Marxist standpoint, who believe, if they're proper Marxists, then they believe in inherent, inveterate, prefabricated class warfare in any society, and that the owning class becomes wealthy by virtue of exploiting the working class, and the only way to remediate that is to wipe out the owning class. So much for the values of the owning class. Right? They get murdered. But even aside from that trifling objection, on its own terms, it's a insanely rationalistic construct. So I'm living for Nancy, and she's living, for Henry, and whatever it is. How do I know Nancy's values better than Nancy does, so that I could achieve her values for her? How does Henry know my values better than I do, so that he could achieve my values for me? It's ridiculous. It's something that academics might kick around in the classroom. When you apply it to real life, it's insane. So I want to have a career in philosophy or in writing. So that's what I love, and I fulfill myself as a writer. So now Nancy's going to write my books for me, because she's living for me. First of all, she can't possibly know what I want to write as well as I know it. And second of all, that robs me of the joy of doing what I love. It's an insane, rationalistic construct that when you actually think of it in real life terms, you just see it. It collapses. It's not possible. Only an individual. So some other people might point things out to the individual, and we get insights from other people about ourselves that we didn't know before. That's enormously helpful. But as a general rule, Dagny knows Dagny's values better than James knows Dagny's values, and so on across the board. And consequently, Dagny is best equipped to pursue her own values rather than having somebody else as a surrogate do it for her.
Thank you, Andy. So I have more questions, but first let's go to John. John.
I was just thinking how I might present this to some people and counter arguments to that, particularly on along the lines of suggesting that values sustain life. How I would link that idea of sustaining life to actually enjoying it. So I could envisage them coming back and saying, well, you just need a loaf of bread to sustain your life for a day. Whereas I might like to go out, have a nice 3-course meal in a restaurant with friends and family, and enjoy myself. So I was just wondering, when you're presenting this idea to other people, how would you be able to link that idea of sustaining life to actually enjoying it as a whole?
Yeah, you know, John, that's a really good question, and I think that's what I love about Aristotle and his concept of eudaimonia. Nikos, eudaimonia in English means flourishing life. Is that
Yeah,
what it
it's
means?
one of the terms that no one has managed to properly translate, but the closest I think you can get is flourishing.
What if we use the whole paragraph? What handle it descriptively, as Ayn Rand says. In the whole paragraph, what would eudaimonia consist of?
So it means them. So it basically, it's first of all, it's like a holistic thing. It's not like I'm happy at the moment. It's I'm on a state where things are as they should be, and this is kind of reflected on me. But also, it's I don't even know how to describe it. It's such a nice word that there's no way that I can explain it, and it's gonna be as good. Okay. But I would say you are on a constant and stable and consistent state of flourishing. I like it,
and I think this is the key. We talk about flourishing life. You're right, John. It's not just subsistence living for however many years, like in the communist conception. It's a good example. They give you a loaf of bread, or a potato, or don't give you anything, unless you starve to death deliberately, like in the Holodomor. And by the way, that movie that's out now, Mr. Jones, about the Holodomor, the Ukrainian terror famine, where Stalin deliberately starved to death millions of Ukrainians, is accurate and shows the dishonesty of Walter Duranty at the New York Times. Very accurately. But flourishing life, John, you're absolutely right. Flourishing life is more than just a couple of potatoes that get us through the day. It's about having an education, and it's about having romantic love, and it's about having friendship, and it's about having your 3-course meal with a glass of wine, and and enjoying it, and going out dancing with the woman you love, and and make love later on at home. It's just this all around rich life where you're constantly pursuing values, and you're seeking values, gaining values, and you're living in a state of value enrichment. And there's a joyous state, even when you're pursuing the values. It's not just the achievement of the values. I want to write a certain book, like the book on heroes. It's a labor of love. Writing a good book is a lot of labor, but it's a labor of love. You're doing what you love then. And so your life is filled, it's like your life is filled with love. It's like you fill your life with the values that are really passionately held. Your career, your closest friends, your romantic partner, the movies, your books that you love. And it's like, metaphorically, it's like, you spend your whole day making love. You're doing what you love constantly. So it's not just sustaining life, it's living life to the fullest.
Thank you. Stephanie, you've put a question in the chat, but I see your hand is raised, so feel free to ask it live.
So Andy, my question is about, I wrote it down sort of to help me try to clarify it, with the parents and children situation, where I think there's a danger that when the parent is doing so much for the child that they can lose sight. They're living for the child rather than keeping their hierarchy of values. So they get to where they feel that the child owes them. And and it's very subtly done, right? That the request you become the doctor, and the child would rather be, a musician, because it's quite different careers, right? So there's a chance there where if you've invested too much in the child, or you've gotten where you've lost sight of your own values, and you've forgotten about the sovereignty of the child to make decisions in life and follow their own path. So that's where I think that the idea of saying it's okay to do all this stuff, to live, you can't live for someone else. Basically, it was what I was taking issue with, that it's that doing a lot for someone who matters to you, it runs a risk of reaching a point where you're doing too much. You're trying to live their life for them, rather than taking pleasure in doing nice things or making, providing for your child in a great way. But that do you not think it runs a risk of becoming too much? So the parent becomes resentful or demanding in a subtle way. Very nice and very pleasant and civil, but it's still, we did all this for you so that you would then do what we want.
Yeah, there's being an effective parent is a real challenge. People often say parenting is the toughest job. Doing it well may well be. That's why, I don't ever scoff at somebody. Often women, once in a while men, who'll take time off from their other career to be a full-time parent. And mom is probably best suited to this. I think most kids benefit from a great deal of maternal love, but sometimes dad could do it too. But yeah, it's a tough job without a doubt. And there's pitfalls and there's obstacles to overcome, and you're pointing out one of them. You reminded me, one of my favorite movies. It was roughly 30 years old now. You guys remember the old Robin Williams film Dead Poets Society? Great film. I won't tell you how it turns out, but and obviously inspired by The Fountainhead. Because I mean, the theme in Dead Poets Society is the important, the independence versus conformity is the theme, and the characters in the movie, their names are Keating and Cameron. They're all jumbled up. Keating is a good guy in the movie. Cameron's a bad guy. But a movie where the theme is independence versus conformity, and the characters' names are Keating and Cameron. I don't think we need to wonder where the influence comes from. But you're right. There's this one kid. I still remember his name, Neil Perry. He's in John Keating was the English teacher that Robin Williams played. He's in the class. He realizes, there's an exclusive prep school. He realizes that he wants to be an actor, but his parents, struggling financially, working hard to send him to this expensive prep school so he can go to Harvard, and go to medical school. And the kid wants to be an actor. And his father says to him at one point, "Sacrifices have been made, Neil. You got to do what we want you to do." And you're right. This is very poor parenting. Let's put it this way: if you really love somebody, and I think with your child it's the clearest example, but human beings love all kinds of their boyfriend, their girlfriend, their husband or wife, their closest friends, their parents. If you really love somebody, the act of goodwill towards other people is one to identify their value hierarchy, identify what their values are, not what you think their values should be, not the values you want them to pursue. You could reason with them about that. You want the kid to go to medical school, but at the end of the day, you realize the kid wants to be an actor. He wants to be a musician. He wants to be an English teacher. These are productive careers. These are legitimate careers. It's not like he wants to be a drug dealer or a hitman for the mob. These are legitimate careers. You get behind it. He doesn't want to go to medical school. You get behind it. You support the person's value hierarchy. It's a simple example is like giving Christmas presents, a birthday gift. How many times you get presents from somebody that have no relation whatever to anything you're interested in? I've gotten presents sometimes, that were just so not me. My emotional reaction was that I want to take it and fling it out the window. What the hell are you giving me this piece of garbage for? And I've taught my daughter, who's now 17, from the time she was very young, the rational principle of gift giving is to identify the values of the person to whom you're giving the gift, and then get the gift in accordance with that person's values. They say it's the thought that counts. I said, yeah, when you give me something that I have no interest in, you didn't put much thought into finding out who I am, you know, or what I want, did you? So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Good parenting involves encouraging the kid to develop rational, healthy, life-promoting values, and then applauding them and supporting them in pursuit of those values, even if they're not the specific life-supporting values that you would want them to pursue. You got to prepare the child to flap his or her wings and leave the nest. And my nest is going to be empty in a few weeks. I'm used to seeing my daughter, you know, every Saturday and sometimes during the week. And she's going to college in a few weeks. And I'm already missing her. But she's prepared. You know, she's ready. You know, and it's sad, but it's also it's a proud thing. She's ready to, you know, to take that step towards, at 17, to take that step towards adulthood. So yeah, it's challenging to be a good parent. You're right, Stephanie. You have these, you know, like one last point. You know the tiger mom stereotype? Some woman wrote a book years ago about in defense of the tiger mom, and it was just, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's just my jaw dropped when I was standing in Barnes and Noble and reading it. She said something, I don't care if the kid's happy or not. You know, she's going to achieve this, that, or the other thing. I said, what? You know, it's like, you know, if I, you know, will really give a hyperbolic example. It said, yeah, oh yeah, my daughter committed suicide at age 27, but by God, she played Carnegie Hall at 26. And you go, what? What are you, crazy? And that's what some of these parents do. They're so overbearing in running the lives of, you know, of their child. They push them so hard rather than encouraging them to find the values that the kid loves, and then pursuing the values because he or she loves the values, not because mom or dad is kicking them in the rear end. So yeah, it's
so interesting what you're reading of Dead Poets Society, because there's another reading through which this film is a bit, quote, problematic. But Razi, let's have at some point either I don't know if there's the technology. I know Michael Malice does it on his show where they're watching live a film and at the same time stopping it and commenting on it. So that would be interesting. Next question though, from Peggy. Is it not best for parents to provide a model of living rational self-interest and healthy boundaries? Why should a child be inspired to grow up just so that they can sacrifice their life for another? So what if you leave your child, you know, yeah, be independent, whatever, and the child becomes a worse, like second-hander or even worse, I don't, who knows what.
I'm confused. So what's the question?
So the question is, so Peggy, if you want, you can come live, but if I understood well, the question points this, that the parents should have quite an active role in providing a model, as maybe as opposed to the Dead Poets Society, where the parent says, so the parent who appears to be too controlling has a bad result, but quite often there's a bad result if you're not controlling. But actually, let me not patronize and see what Peggy says. It's not disagreement with anything you have said. Oh, okay, just expanding on it. Oh, okay, I see. So there's not either or. So, and I assume, Adi, that you had a very active role in guiding your daughter towards the right values. Am I right?
I've been trying. I bribed her twice to read Anthem, but she's just, you know, I paid her the money, and she's just not a reader, you know. I mean, she's a great kid, but she's just not a reader. I wanted her to read Ayn Rand, you know, to inoculate her, because she's going to college and she'll be indoctrinated to be a communist, you know. And but she's just, she's really a great kid, very honest, hardworking, and everything, but she's just not intellectually motivated. She's not a reader. So I try. I've been trying. I got to keep trying. It's not, you know, the game isn't over until it doesn't even end when I die, because, you know, long after I'm gone, she may well see things, read things, and realize That's what my dad was trying to tell me when I was, when I was a teenager. Now I'm 45 or 50 years old. Now I see what dad was telling me. So it is a long game here. So yeah, I've tried, but I'll keep trying. But the question was about the moral turpitude or the immorality.
No, it's what we discussed. It was more like providing a model with your values for the child.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with anybody, and certainly with your child, the role modeling is the most important thing, right? They, once in a while, human beings or human society gets things right. They're not always wrong. When they say actions speak louder than words, an English proverb, is very true. So what we tell our children is important, but what we do is the most important thing. And that's why, it's so sad that there's so many kids who grow up without a dad who's actively involved in their lives. I was at a writer's retreat last year at Jack Canfield's house. The guy who wrote, co-authored Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And there was one guy writing a book, and he put it, he said something to me that struck me in a way that was new. He said, the world needs more fathers. And there's a lot of truth to that. There's just a lot of men who, look, it's easy to, the easy part is to get your girlfriend or wife pregnant, right? And then that's the easy part. But the real work is when the child is born and contributing to, to rearing the child. And it's very harmful for the girls growing up not to have a father, and it's disastrous for the boys, right? And so, yeah, the role modeling for mom and dad both for the child on how to live a rational life is important. Yeah, actually showing them in action what it looks like to be honest, to be responsible, to be trustworthy. Yeah, that's critically important.
And it's not a coincidence that so many men nowadays are looking for models in Jordan Peterson or in the manosphere or in Joe Rogan or whatever, because this is definitely a symptom of missing or absent, although technically they're their fathers. Anyway, more comments, so I'll go on. So Stephanie says that there's the risk of living vicariously through your child. So let's say you always wanted to be a football star, you failed, so now you try to make your child be a football star. And having been for years into sports, I can definitely see, and actually I would say I know a lot of super talented athletes that were ruined by the dreams that their fathers had for them and kind of completely patronized them. So Glenn says, Rand makes the argument that the concept of value depends hierarchically on the concept of life. And so to embrace non-egoistic values creates a contribution, I think you mean a contradiction, because they undermine life and thus the concept of value. Have I got this right? And how important is the argument to prove egoism? How would an advocate of altruism attack the argument? Okay, let's take this. I think it's a very, very good question if just we manage to cut down through it. So value, the concept of value depends on the concept of life, because as Rand says, I've got it here, the standard of value of the objectivist ethics is man's life, or that which is required for man's survival qua man. And as you said earlier, Andy, because life is not automatic, we need values. Right.
Did the questioner use the term non-egoistic values?
Because so then the question goes, I will reread it.
Yeah, go ahead.
To embrace non-egoistic values, so let's put it this way, to embrace altruism, to put it in fewer words, creates a contradiction, because altruism undermines life and thus the concept of value. So he asks two things, Glenn. The first question he's asked is, has he got this right? From my understanding, yes, you got this right, but let's hear from the expert. And B, how important is this argument to prove egoism? and see how would an advocate of altruism attack this argument.
Well, first thing I wanted to say is we want to be clear in our use of terms. Non-egoistic values is an oxymoron. Values of their very nature support life, and consequently, the values are egoistic. They're that which.
But here's a question on that. Sorry, doesn't Mao or doesn't Himmler have values?
Now you said, or Himmler?
Yes.
People are often mixed cases, even if they're 99% evil or 99%.
No. I mean, let's say they have a mission. Their mission is to exterminate other races or classes. Couldn't you say that that's their value? That's what they try to gain and or keep.
In the broadest generic sense, in the way Ayn Rand uses the term values, then Hitler, Mao, Stalin, the triumph of race war, class war, the annihilation of class enemies, race enemies is a value in the psychological sense that which they act to gain or keep. But in a moral sense, in the philosophic sense, no, values support life. Mass murderers don't have any values. Loot is not of value to a bank robber. Drugs are not of value to a drug addict. Power is not of value to a power luster, because these things harm life. They undermine it. They end life. They eradicate it, even the life of the person pursuing this thing. Values are that which promote life. This is a seminal insight on Ayn Rand's part. It's a life-giving insight. These other things are disvalues. They're anti-values. They're death-dealing evils. So, I think Ayn Rand is brilliant on this point. Values support life, given what human nature is. They support human life. So, no, and it's a good question, Nikos, but Hitler doesn't have any values, or Mao, no.
All right, let's go back then to Glenn. So, I think we agree that he got right the platform, that life requires values, and therefore life comes first and value comes second. I think we also agree that to embrace non-egoistic values, which, as you said, is already an oxymoron, is a contradiction. So I think Glenn got this wrong as well. Now, how important is this argument to prove egoism? And to be honest, Andy, I've been into objectivism seriously for 4 or 5 years, probably more. I still have trouble. My biggest trouble basically in objectivism is to, quote, prove egoism, to prove why we should be egoist. I know how to do it rationalistic. I know how to draw it on the boards. Trying to explain it to my uncle, I've got a problem. So taking this kind of scheme that Glenn created, could you build a defense of egoism on that?
Yeah, I could just tell you could just find out what somebody's values are. So let's say, I don't know your uncle, Nikos, but let's say he's married, loves his wife. Let's say he has children, he loves his children. Let's say he's owns a diner.
Oh, he's a hero of mine. He used to work 2 jobs till he was like 55. He would get up 3:30 in the morning. But philosophically, he's where everyone is.
I know. I understand. You remind me. I watched the movie Uncle Tom for the second time last night, and I strongly recommend it to anybody about the rise of a Black conservative movement to the United States. And I can't remember who it was. I don't remember if it was Herman Cain, or one of these successful Black businessmen who said his father was a hero. His father worked 3 jobs, when he was a kid to support the family. But anyhow. So you find out what somebody's values are. Let's say the person is a carpenter or a plumber, or he's an artisan. He's very good working with his hands and building stuff, constructing stuff, repairing, fixing. Makes money that way. Gets great satisfaction. And it's okay. Well, let's give these things up. But first of all, give up your wife, because we don't want to be selfish, and ignore your kids, because we let go of the things that are most important to you. Surrender your career as a plumber, and go which a career you love, and go drive a taxi, which is a career that just bores you. Let's say subtract from your life the most important values, and let's see what kind of life you live. And if we continue in that way, let's subtract even the necessities of life. No more food for you. you know, no more food, you know, and, you know, no more shelter. You got to sacrifice for the homeless, give you, you know, go out and live in the street, give, you know, you start subtracting the values from somebody's life. They're going to realize, wait a minute, if I give up those values, I'm going to be unhappy. If I give up these more fundamental values, I'm going to be dead. You know, and I think it's a, you know, very reality-oriented method of showing them the importance, you know, of an honest person to be egoistic, and the absolute necessity of achieving values in order to live, and then on top of that, to live well. So you know, that's how I would do it, you know, with my students.
Right. And I don't know if you can ask. By the way, Glenn, Peggy also says that she watched that film last night and she enjoyed it. Now, Glenn,
great minds think alike, Peggy.
Glenn asks a third question, which I don't know if you can answer it, but he would say, how would an altruist attack this argument? And I try to do this on the devil's advocate thing that, so they would do two things. The one, they would say, they would create the false alternative between egoism and not having social relationship with other people. Or two, they would create the other false view that being an egoist basically means you're a jerk and all that stuff. So to be honest, Glenn, I cannot think of a way that they would attack this successfully without doing something dishonest. So I want to raise another question, not another topic, Andy, and this is the relationship between values and purpose. And actually, I'm thinking of, like, there's this advert, I don't know if people remember it, from Sneakers, who said something like, you're not yourself when you're hungry. I would say you're not yourself when you don't pursue values. And the person that comes to mind is Gail Wynand. And throughout the whole book, we see a guy who's half dead spiritually. Like, he's like, shall I kill myself? I mean, it's going to be so boring that it's not even worth the try. I'm not going to kill myself. And then when he finds two values, Dominique and Rourke, we see how he's completely transformed. So what is the relationship between value and purpose, and how important it is? No, I mean, it is obviously very important, but let's draw this bridge between values and purpose, because, as we said, it's very, very important.
Was that a question, Nikos?
No, it was a statement inviting your comment on it.
Oh, okay. Well, I like the Gail Wynand example. You remember when Wynand then, based on, you know, the meeting these heroes that reinvigorated his soul, he starts putting more of his own values into the banner and squashing more of the pap that his public likes, but is definitely not amenable to his soul. And
Dominique tells him something like, you could have been a great journalist.
During the strike, and should have been a great journalist.
Yeah.
But anyhow, Alvis Garrett, you know, who's the champion of conventional, folksy, you know, kind of pap that Wynand's readers prefer. He says to Toohey, he says, you know, what's gotten into him? And Toohey says, I'm afraid the question is what's coming out of him. You know, what's getting out of him. His values are coming to the fore. And I think, to me, purpose is value driven, you know, in a rational, life enhancing sense. And that is, you know, somebody, let's say, wants to go to medical school. We've been using medical school as a negative example. Let's say, you know, somebody wants to be an MD. It's a great profession. It's a noble profession. In a free country, you can make good money at it, as well you should, since you're promoting health, you know, where sickness used to be. And so you have a purpose based on your values, your fascination with human biology, human medicine, you know, promoting health and curing illness. Now you have a purpose. Go to medical school, get an MD, you know, do the internship and residency, set up in private practice. A good example, speaking of Uncle Tom, one of my heroes, Dr. Ben Carson. you know, he's very religious, and I don't agree with everything he says. But I mean, what he achieved as a brain surgeon and pioneering brain surgery techniques amongst children is truly heroic. And you read his I recommend his autobiography, Gifted Hands, to everybody. It's, you know, it shows somebody who had rational purpose based on very healthy life promoting values.
And another thing about values, and that will be my last point today, is it's on the chapter by Greg Salmieri on the companion to Ayn Rand. Or it's so he says basically to value is to use logic and to integrate, which basically means that to value is already an achievement. It's difficult. So a lot of people, and I think again we go back to the fountainhead. Remember when, I don't remember if it's the fountainhead or if it's Reardon's trial, that Rand says that the people in the court, there was a time in their life that they felt something high. There was a time in their life that they lived something very, very, that they did not merely exist, but they actually lived. So dissecting this and going deeper, it basically means that to exist and not merely to live, you have to value. But to value is difficult. That's why these people are like these automatons. And we see so many people out there who are automatons. They're not passionate about anything. They haven't got like a real passion in their life. Because to actually value takes effort. And from my experience as a second-hander for decades of my life, I can tell you that doing the things that other people like, oh, I'm a good Marxist, which means I need to like this music. This sucks because you watch a film like, oh, this film is supposed to be super radical. It says nothing inside me, but then you have to persuade yourself that it's good. So you cannot value, and if you cannot value, you're basically half dead. You cannot live. And I don't remember where I've read it. It's either in the Fountainhead or in the essays on the Fountainhead or somewhere else. To value is basically to say a yes or a no. And I think someone says this to York. Everything for you is a yes or a no. And the way I'm understanding it is that you place a value judgment on everything. And that's what it actually means. Anyway, too much stuff on the table. Pick whatever you want from that.
Yeah, I mean, Winan talks about, you know, you encounter something and your soul says yes to it. Your soul says no, and you know, and that's like such an exhilarating part. I mean, I read Ayn Rand's novels when I was a teenager. I was 16 and 17, and my soul said yes, you know, to the Fountain, and my soul said yes to Ayn Rand's heroes, to Ayn Rand's ethics, to Ayn Rand's underlying philosophy, and it still says yes, and it's exciting. It's, you know, it's liberating. I just want to say, there are honest people and good people and rational people who don't know what they want to do with their life. You know, and that's sad. It's not a moral, you know, delinquency on their part. They just haven't found, you know, what they love. And you know, I've written a self-help book based on, I haven't published it yet, but I've written a self-help book based on my course, How to Be an Impassioned Value. And one of the things I advise them is to be on the explorer's premise, to open themselves up to, you know, not only go out into the world and explore it physically, but, you know, different classes, you know, in the university or online. And, you know, there's, as Leonard Peikoff once said, you know, reality is enormously fascinating to a rational man. You know, and you can find those things, activities or persons that set your soul on fire. But yeah, oftentimes it's a struggle. I mean, I knew from the time I was a little kid I wanted to be a writer, so I love books. So I was, you know, lucky in that way. But many people don't know, you know, from the time they're young, what's going to fill their life with passion. And then it becomes a very rational and determined quest to find the things, activities, or persons that do fill your life with passion. And it's very noble. It's a very moral undertaking to pursue values. And sometimes it's an arduous task, but it can be done. And I think encourage the people who don't know what they want out of life to really go out into the world and look for those things.
Yeah, I got carried away in my rant, and Stephanie says, no, the good thing is to live, not merely to exist. So I got them the other way around. But anyway, you people get the message. Anyway, Bob, you are unmuted.
Yeah, I wanted to pursue something that it looks like Glenn was thinking about. and that is that this idea, the marvelous idea that Ayn Rand sees from her theory of concepts, is that you can't get the value, you can't get the concept of value without the concept of life. And Glenn is asking, yeah, but what if somebody starts questioning at that point? How are you going to defend egoism if they throw away the theory of concepts, or in at least this particular hierarchical dependency? And the sort of person who would do that, I believe, would be somebody who gets their values from God rather than from thought. And it would indeed be either hopeless, or you have to pay attention to epistemology and argue at that level in order to make your point.
You know, I get your point, Bob, and there's also people who would dispute the hierarchy just from a nihilistic standpoint. You know, what if we just dispense with life? You know, well, yeah, if we dispense with life, then we dispense with values. This is true, and I've often said, you know, once in a while I get this mentality. Go ahead, you know, go ahead, dispense with life, and you if you truly do that, then you're not just talking nonsense. If you truly do it, you're going to be dead very quickly. You know, and if that's what you want, that's your choice. But your death, this kind of irrational, suicidal approach does not obviate the truth that values and moral goodness depends upon life.
I'm fortunate not to have been exposed to as many young college students as you, so I haven't run into that view.
Yeah, well, you are fortunate. Yeah, but and worse, the nihilists usually aren't content to kill themselves; they want to kill everybody else. You know, they're Nazis or Marxist communists, and they want to destroy, you know, burn down American cities, destroy capitalism, destroy America. They're not content to kill themselves. So, but yeah, the question, if somebody does attack or dismiss the foundation of the argument, that life, you know, that life is the basis of valuing, then yeah, then that's correct. Then values collapse if we there's no ethics on an anti-life philosophy. There's also no life on an anti-life philosophy. There's death and there's mass death, and unfortunately there are people who choose that, and it's their very, you know, the nihilists that I'm talking about, the Hitlers, the Stalins, the Maos, it's their very rejection of life, the foundation of all goodness, that makes them so evil.
So Glenn asks, where does this nihilism come from? And let me make one point where it does not come from. So I'm reading a 3-volume biography of Stalin, which is the most definite work that has ever been done on Stalin.
Well, you have a strong stomach because you can read 3 volumes on Stalin. You know, good for you. But
here's a very interesting thing, though, and Stephen Kotkin, who is the author, makes this point. There is all this, I don't want to use a bad word, sallow reading of Stalin, all this stuff, says, oh, he was beaten as a child. It's like this psychological trauma that made him a nihilist. Turns out there was nothing wrong. Okay, nothing wrong. There was not this big thing that made Stalin a nihilist. The truth of the story is his ideology made him what he is. His ideas made him what he is. There was nothing wrong with Stalin or with Joseph Djougashvili as a kid. There was, okay, he didn't have a great childhood, but that's not what made him a nihilist or a murderer or whatever, because I'm not sure if Stalin was indeed a nihilist or he was, but anyway, that's another discussion. But quite often, I think, specifically today in Hollywood, you go back to that moment that something happens to an individual and something, I think, unfortunately, it's not that simple. And it's that ideas have consequences. So why do they hate life? Where does there's nihilism come from? It doesn't come from one place. It comes, I would say, from the surrounding philosophy. It comes from what they get taught at schools. So it's impossible to say there's this one, I'm not saying that Glenn tried to do this. That's why I say that's kind of different. So, Andy, if you had to answer this question briefly, because otherwise it can take hours. Where does naivety come from, and why do they hate life?
That's a deep question. It's a good question. I would say, Glenn, I assume you've read Atlas Shrugged. Go back and reread it, paying very careful attention to the character of James Taggart. Because in the character of James Taggart, Ayn Rand gives us a brilliant analysis, just a profound and deep analysis of where this mentality comes from. And it's deep. If I understand it correctly, I think Ayn Rand is saying this. Somebody like Taggart is, in her terms, is a whim worshiper. He doesn't want to put forth the effort to make his values become real in reality. He wants reality to snap into line in accordance with his whims, and it doesn't. And he's resentful and filled with anger and hatred over that. And consequently, he can't do anything against reality. He can't harm reality. But he can transfer that hatred of a reality that won't conform to his whims to the people who do deal effectively with reality. And notice from his earliest childhood, from the earliest scenes, James Taggart hates the can-do people, the people who can deal effectively with reality. Remember the time he is a kid, they get him a motorboat and he's struggling to learn it? Which is not a big deal. I'd struggle to, handle a motorboat when I first got it. Also, many people would. But Francisco jumps in. Wow, he'd never been in a motorboat in his life. Wow, when Francisco just masters it. I mean, that's Francisco. And everybody else, if I was there, wow, how does he do that? I mean, how is, but remember James Taggart's looking at him with this look of hatred. He hates the people who can deal effectively with reality.
Remember also the next,
the Riordans, the Dagneys, the Franciscos, the Galts. He wants they're so big, they're so strong, he can't hurt them. And so, but he can't hurt the heroes. He can't hurt reality, which he hates. He can't hurt the heroes who can deal effectively with reality, or he tries to, but who can he hurt? The hero worshipers. And that's why he deliberately kills Cheryl Brooks. That's why he marries her. That's why he kills her, because she's a stand-in, the hero worshiper that she is. She's a stand-in for the heroes he hates, who themselves are stand-in for the reality that he loathes, that doesn't give him this effortless, whim worshiping success. That, I mean, that's a monumental genius who identified, these truths and then dramatized it in the greatest novel ever written. I mean, I salute Ayn Rand. That is just a profound insight into the nature of evil and this nihilistic bloodlust to destroy. Pay careful to James Taggart's character, Glenn. I think you'll get the answers you want from Ayn Rand's presentation of him.
If you realize that your basic tool of survival is reason, and if you realize what our culture is doing to your belief in the efficacy of reason, you will understand that a lot of people fear that they cannot survive because reason does not work for them. That fear of survival, I believe, is a major impetus for the nihilistic attitude of our youth.
Exactly, because they're basically telling you the world out there makes no sense, so therefore you have to fear and you have to cling with the group to make sense of the world. And something else on the people who mentioned education in the comments, and that Bob hinted to it right now. Remember, Andy, the next scene from the boat where, because it's one thing for someone having flawed premises, it becomes even worse when society gives him a high five. So remember that when James Taggart returns from university, he has this added kind of snob and Francisco tells him with his excellent wit something like, because James Taggart gives him this line from like the typical BS that he learns in university, and he thinks that now he has an extra weapon against Francisco, and Francisco tells him something like, James, you will realize at some moment in your life that words have exact meanings, or something like that. So it's one thing to have this dark psyche, but when society and the dominant ideology encourages you to develop that, then it becomes even worse. Right. So I think that will be it for tonight, unless someone else has any other question. Stephanie makes the point that it's altruism that is destroying the world, and actually it means a desire to destroy, which is close to nihilism. Anyway, more on all that next week. We're going to have Andy again to discuss the virtues, and the discussion, we didn't even touch self-esteem, but we're going to touch, when we touch pride, we can also talk about the value of self-esteem, so that but actually it's Razi who should do the outro, because he knows the program.
Yeah, I just wanted to really quickly get back to the office and do the outro from here. So yeah, so next week, part 2 of our discussion of the objectivist ethics on the virtues. And before that, as I mentioned, Sunday, we are all guests on HBL. I know some of us are already on HBL, but if you're not, then you're welcome to join Meeting of the Minds Sunday, 5 p.m. We'll post that on Meetup soon. And then Monday, Gina Gorlin and Diana Fleischman on evolution and volition in psychology. As you probably all remember, Nikos and I used to be a couple of really well-dressed dudes. As you can see, Nikos is now dressing as if he's in Seattle in the early 90s, and I found in the back of the closet. But if you join the Ayn Rand Center membership program, I promise you that's not where the money's going to go. We'll figure out how to dress well without that. But we will invest that in more content. We have a daily show on Facebook now, and we have 2 of these meetups every week. One of them, which also goes on Facebook Live. And there's more that we would like to do. So AynRandCenter.co.uk/membership. That is the one page of the website that is still up, because the website is under construction, and I think that's that new website should be launched late next week. But the membership is still there, and of course you can always help us out by sharing, following, subscribing, all that. Nikos, I'm forgetting something that should be...
Yes, that if you donate, make the reference for Nikos to buy a better shirt. No, I can make the moral case why this is an excellent and very fashionable shirt. But what am I forgetting? Oh, the Daily Show.
Is that what we're forgetting? It's called the Daily Objective, by the way. The Daily Show is a different...
Yeah, that's how we call it. Yeah, okay. The Daily... Yes, let's encourage people to follow us on the Daily Objective, which is our daily Facebook Live show with myself, Raka, Gloria Alvarez, and many good guests. So Bob, who has a very sharp eye, asked, "Didn't you have a white shirt for the Daily Show, Nikos?" And the answer is yes, but because I live on the south, it's cold. And my rule is you do not wear a white shirt with a t-shirt inside, even if it's invisible. But you are allowed to wear another shirt with a t-shirt inside if the t-shirt is invisible. But Razi does not know these rules, so he cannot go that deep. So that's the story of the change of the shirt between the Daily Show and the Meetup. I'm sure people have had enough of fashion talk. So
you don't live in the south, you live in the north.
Sorry, north, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and we're working on that, by the way, as well. We're trying to fix that issue.
This is all very fascinating, guys, but once you have a great day.
Yeah, and I'm just stalling because there is something that I'm forgetting, and I don't know what it is. But all right, we will be back on Sunday, and I'll post it. That's another reason to follow us on all the social media. Yeah, I'll post it. On social media if I remember what it is. But yeah, the 2 events that I mentioned, as I mentioned, haven't been posted yet. Once they are posted, please sign up and please share them with anyone who you think would benefit from them and whose whose presence in them you think we would benefit from. So thanks again, and see you all Sunday.